Father, I thank you, God, that you are rising up our faith, Father. And you're continuing, Lord, to call us, Lord, to step into the waters when it looks, Lord, it looks scary and it looks dangerous, Father, but you're calling us to walk towards you, Lord. So, Father, I thank you, God, today, Lord. I pray, Father, that you would use us, Lord, to glorify your name, God. I pray, Father, that you would bless everyone, Father, who are not able to make it, Lord. I pray, Father, you would bless them, Lord, whether they're at home or they're doing something, Lord. I just pray, Father, that you would speak to them, God. Lord, we praise you, Father, for what you are doing and what you're going to do, Lord. Be glorified, Lord. Rise up our faith, Father. Give us childlike faith, that we don't think about our past, we don't think about our previous fears or where we feel that you let us down and we wanted you to do something, Lord, and we don't think of all those other things that get in the way of our faith, Father. So I pray you restore our childlike faith, Father. Lord, we thank you. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen. 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 So we're actually transitioning today. We've been talking about who God is, and we're going into, not really put a halt, but get into a little bit deeper of who God is, and we're talking about God in the flesh. And we're talking about the second Adam and the humanity of God, in a sense, which is Jesus. And so in Genesis, we talked about the idea that God is creative. He created all the planets and stars, and He created human beings, and He created animals, and He was very creative in doing this. And we don't have to run to the other people and figure out, God, what have you created me to do? And God is personal. He's in the middle of our lives. He's in the middle of our situation. He's not a God that's very distant, but He's here with us. He understands what we're going through, and He sees what we're going through, and He's in the middle of it with us. He's a personal God. We can talk to Him personally. So I want to talk about the two promises, because they're going to lead into the next segment of what we're talking about. So God promised, He actually made a promise to Satan. And in Genesis 3:15, God promises Satan, and He says, "And I will put hostility between you and the woman, between your offspring and her offspring. Her offspring will attack your head or crush your head, and you will attack or crush her offspring's heel." So there's a hostility that God is promising. He's saying, because you have done this, because the first fall was not the fall of man. The first fall was actually the fall of Satan. And when he did that, God is saying, now because you have done that, I'm going to put hostility. And so there's going to be an offspring that's going to come, and he's going to crush you. He's going to put it into everything that Satan has done. And we can be thankful again. And then in Genesis chapter 12, verse 2 and 3, God tells Abraham, I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you, and I will make your name great so that you will be a blessing. And so that's kind of where we transition to next. Because who is that offspring? And who is that blessing? What is that blessing? Was it just a bunch of money that Abraham was going to give to the world? Or was it something different? So these are some of life's most important questions. What will we do for our career? What college will our kids go to? Who will they marry? SATs and doing well on those. And then most importantly, what am I going to eat after church? I know for us that's something we always think about, and we're always wondering. And maybe if you're hungry right now, you're like, what sounds good? Chick-fil-A. It's closed. Unfortunately, which is this picture. Hungry after church, Chick-fil-A is closed. And I always crave Chick-fil-A on Sundays. It's never any other day. It's always on Sundays. And then this little picture to the right, it says, when church is over and you're trying to leave, but your mom keeps on talking. Always talking. Like, we got to get out of here, but always keeps talking. And then back to this picture. So the reason I had that toss test, and I wanted to share a story about that. So this guy is looking at her story. So when I was in high school, they initiated toss tests in Texas. Before that, you can just graduate. You didn't have to take the test. You could take the test, but that would not hold you back. So I didn't do very good in school. So I remember I was copying off of this girl in front of me. And the teachers were not supposed to allow you to go and check your work the next day. But that was on Monday. So Tuesday, I was looking at her work, and we had 2 different tests. And I was like, I was just cheating off of her, and we had 2 different tests. So it was not the best day. But God was grateful, and I was able to pass. I didn't pass my science portion. I failed like 3 times. I had to do summer school. But yeah, so I was cheating off. Make sure they have the right tests. I'm twin. Don't cheat. And then so we get to the most important question that we will ever answer. So those things are important. What we're going to eat after church is important. What we're going to do for a career is important. But the most important question is, who is Jesus and who do you say that He is? Who do we say He is? Because unfortunately, we can't cheat on that test. When we're before God, we can't cheat and we can't say, well, I know who Jesus is because of my grandparents. And Soraya and Sebastian can't say, well, I know who Jesus is because my dad's a pastor. My mom's a pastor. They went to Bible college. They can't say that. They have to be able and stand one day before God and say, who is Jesus? Who do I say He is? And so that's why we want to talk about this as we're talking about God, and we're transitioning to who is Jesus and who do we say that He is? Who do you say I am? So these are different portraits of Jesus. Right now there's a lot of stir of saying that Jesus is African American and saying that Jesus was this and that. So there's all these different portraits throughout time. And Jesus has blonde hair and blue eyes and things like that. So these are different portraits. And there's also Asian Jesus, and if you've ever seen Talladega Nights, there was little 3-pound, 5-pound baby Jesus in the manger. That's kind of so there's different portraits, and so it's important because sometimes, because God created us in His image, we want to make Him into ours, and we want Him to look like us. We want Him to act like us, and we have to know who was the real Jesus, so that we're worshiping the right Jesus and not a Jesus that we have created. There's many people who look at the Bible, especially the New Testament, and say, well, you know what? I don't really like what that says. So I'm going to take it out. And there's a picture, I don't know if y'all seen it on Facebook. It says, judge not. And then all the rest is like kind of scribbled out. I'll show y'all later. But because Jesus says, judge not, lest you be judged. And then He gives you a whole criteria on how to judge. So He's saying, don't judge people in a way that's hypocrisy. Because we are supposed to judge and know the difference between right and wrong. And we're supposed to judge people because He says you're going to judge them and know them by their fruit. So when we see people that say, oh, I'm a Christian, but we look at their lifestyle, then we can say, well, I don't know if they're really Christian. So there's a right Jesus, and then there's a Jesus that we make in our own image. So I want to talk about the gospel because, especially now, more and more atheists are starting to say things about the gospel. We can't trust the gospels. They were written by man and all these other things. So before we get into that, I wanted to talk about the gospel because the gospels are connecting everything we've been talking about in Genesis. We went through chapter of Genesis 1 through 13, and everything is connecting back. So in Mark chapter 1, it says, the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. He's taking it all the way back and he's saying, this is the Son of God. The word beginning actually in the Greek is in arche, which is in the beginning. So he's going back to Genesis chapter 1 because it says in the beginning. It's the same word. If you look at the Septuagint, which is a long fancy word, it means the Greek translation of the Old Testament. I know you're probably like, I don't care or I'm lost. But if you go back there, it's the same exact word. In arche, in the beginning. And that's exactly how Genesis chapter 1 starts. It says, in the beginning, in arche. In Hebrew, it's Barashit bara Elohim. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And so it's actually initiating the saying, we know how Genesis started. It was beautiful, it was perfect, it was amazing. But in chapter 3, everything messed up. So what Jesus is coming and He's doing, He's saying, I'm bringing a new beginning. Because one day there's going to be a new heaven. One day there's going to be a new earth. One day all of the problems that we have and human trafficking and bullying and bills and all this other stuff is going to be done away with. Because Jesus, He's starting to initiate that. He's bringing a new beginning. So that's what we see in Mark. And so I want to talk briefly about the word gospel. Because we say the gospel, but we really don't know what the word means. So the word gospel was not really a religious term. It was actually a military term that they used in the empire. So if you see on the left side, so these people are bringing the gospel. The gospel is good news. Whenever you're in a war, whenever someone's in a war, they didn't have Facebook back then. They didn't have Snapchat. They didn't have text message. So how would you know what's happening? Your country is invading another country, or they're invading you. you're worried, are we going to lose everything? Because back then, like whenever someone won a war, they were all slaves or they were all killed. So you were worried. Is this good news? Is it bad news? What's happening? So say we'll have someone to come and proclaim the good news and proclaim the gospel. Hey, we won the war. Hey, we're winning the war. We're going to win. So don't be afraid. Don't be afraid because we're going to win. So that's actually the history of the gospel. So what they did is they took this same word and say, well, we're proclaiming a different kingdom. We're proclaiming a different good news because this is the real king. Caesar, we know who Caesar is, but we have a new king and he's coming. So anytime there was a war or battle or there was a birth or death, whenever Caesar or any of the Caesars had a child, they would proclaim the good news. We just had a son. Let's celebrate. And so the word gospel is actually, it comes from the Greek word, means euangelion, which is, I don't know if you've ever seen, what is it, My Greek Wedding, My Big Fat Greek Wedding? Have you ever seen that? No? If you see it, there's the dad in there. He's like, give me any word, and I'll show you how it comes from the Greek. And then he says Windex, and he says this word, and then that's how we have Windex. The gospel was actually a word that was used in the Roman times that was an official message. And so that's where we get the word gospel. So when we think of the gospel, we think of that. It's someone bringing news about something that is of a king. The thing about the good news is it's only good news if we know the bad news. You know the bad news? You're like, yeah, no. The bad news is that we are all sinners because if we look in Genesis, again, I'm just trying to tie everything together. So in Genesis, there was paradise and there was paradise lost. And so that's the bad news. The bad news is that Cain killed his brother Abel. The bad news is that everybody was doing wicked in their own eyes. The bad news was that God had to flood the whole earth because everybody was doing evil. And it continued on, and it continued on, and it continued on. And then God is saying, well, I have a good news that I'm bringing. I'm going to put an end to it one day. So these are the different gospels and how they start off. In Mark, I just said, and I'll read it. Mark chapter 1, it says, the beginning, in arche, the beginning of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so we see a similar thing in the book of Matthew and in Luke. So in Matthew, he's actually tying it back to Abraham. Because Abraham, remember, the promise to Abraham was, you're going to have an offspring, and you're going to be blessed so that the world will be blessed. And it's not just, hey, Abraham, I'm going to give you money so everybody in the whole world will have the same amount of money. We're all going to be on the same scale. But the blessing was that I'm going to give you an heir, which is Jesus, so that the whole world will be able to be part of the family. And so that's where Matthew takes it. Matthew chapter 1, I'm going to jump there real quick. I know we don't like genealogies, but in the book of Matthew, it has one of the best genealogies and the best understanding, because we see that Jesus is not just for the rich, and he's not just for the righteous, but he's also for the poor, and he's not just for the Jews, but he's also for the Gentiles, because they're here in Matthew chapter 1, they're in the lineage, and God is saying they are important too. Women are important too. Gentiles are important too. Not just the rich and the high class people like David and Solomon, who did these amazing things and messed up as well. But everybody is important. And so it's saying that. But let's see. Verse 1. The book of the genealogy of Jesus Christ, son of David, the son of Abraham. Again, Matthew ties it back to Abraham, because Abraham is the first. He's the father of the faith. He's the first one that God gave the promise to. And it's interesting, if you look at the Greek word for genealogy, it's actually genesos, which sounds a lot like Genesis, the beginning. And so again, they're tying it all the way back to Genesis chapter 1. The son of Methuselah, the son of Enoch, the son of Jared, the son of Mathalel, the son of Canaan, the son of Enos, the son of Seth, the son of Adam, the son of God. So he takes it all the way back to different places. So Mark and Matthew both took it back to Abraham. But Luke actually takes it to Adam, because he wants to tie in, and he wants to say what happened in Genesis is going to be completed in this man, Jesus. The genealogy of Jesus is going to be brought to bring everything back. It's going to be a new beginning. We're going to start over fresh, and we're going to have a new beginning. So he takes it all the way back to Adam. And then I wanted to kind of land on John chapter 1. Because even if we think, okay, well, they have this similar word in RK, you know, okay, yeah, I can kind of see that. Maybe it makes sense. But John, he takes it all the way back. He makes it absolutely clear that I'm talking about Genesis. He says, in the beginning was the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All the things made through Him, and without Him, nothing was made. And in Him was life, and the light of men. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness shall not overcome it. So he's saying, look, if you read Matthew and you say, okay, it has one Greek word, or if you read Mark and it has one Greek word, and you're saying, okay, this is Genesis chapter 1. He says, no, look, I want you to know, before anything was created, Jesus was there. Before anything happened, Jesus was there. Before Satan fell, Jesus was there. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. And He was with God in the beginning. Again, it has the same Greek words, in arche, in the beginning. Because the disciples are trying to make a point, and the point is, Jesus is going to be the person to bring a new beginning. So, I want to ask a question, and since Susie's out, why do you think that there's so many Gospels? So why do you think there's Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John instead of just Matthew or just instead of John? Why?
4 different people experience it.
That's, yeah, exactly. Perfect. You get an A. So that's what happened. And so this is another way someone had put it is, let's say if I go and I meet the president, and I'm excited, we have a great conversation, and he wants to do some great things. And then I come home and I tell Susie, I'm like, yeah, you know, the meeting I had with the president was amazing. We talked about this and this. And she's going to say, what kind of drinks did they have? And I'm like, they were like purple or green. Like, what was the floor look like? And I was like, I don't know, it was brown. And she's like, well, what kind of picture frame did they have? Was it real or did it just look real? And I'm like, that doesn't matter. Like, it happened, but that was not my emphasis. And so we have different, like you said, we have different perspectives, different emphasis. And it's both important. To me, it might not be important, but for her, it's like, no, like, these things are important. Like, don't you notice anything? Which is what she would ask me. And I say, yeah, I noticed, but I was more so concerned about this instead of that. And so you're right. So there's different emphasis. There are different people's experiences. That's the perfect way of putting it. They saw things, and God led them to write different aspects of the same gospel. So some people say, well, that means that the Bible is not able to, you can't really trust the Bible, but that's not actually true. And we're going to talk about that next week more, actually. So, I wanted to talk about this before we get to what we're going to talk about next. So, the word ark in the Hebrew Bible and the Old Testament, there is only used two different times. It's used for Noah's Ark, which is the big boat, and it's also used for Moses while he's in the basket. It's also called an ark. So we have the Ark of the Covenant, which is a big square box, but that's a different Hebrew word that's used. And so what the writers were doing is they wanted to make a connection, was Moses. Moses wanted to make a connection between the two different arks. Because God is going to flood the whole earth, and water is going to come, and rain is going to come down. And when it does, they're in this safety net, which is the... And so what happens is, God is saying the same thing that happened with that big boat is going to be the same thing that happens with Moses. Because his family was trying to protect him, and they put him inside of his ark, inside of his boat. And God's promise was not this big boat, but it was this small baby, which ties us into the next thing. Alright, so let's say if you're living right now, we're living in America, and let's say another country comes and attacks us. And this country comes and attacks us, and we're enslaved, and we have to do what they say for 20, 30 years. And then God says, I'm going to give you a sign that I'm going to deliver you. I'm going to give you a sign that you are now no longer going to be slaves. You're no longer going to be under their control. what kind of sign would you expect? So, Susie, I'm asking you as well. Alright, so let's say if a country comes and invades America, and when they do that, God is saying that I'm going to bring you out of this captivity, I'm going to release you, and I'm going to take you out of that. What would be a good sign? What would be a good sign for you to see? Like a military tank or some kind of, like some of these guys, right? You would think like Justice League, right? Like, oh, God is raising up this guy who's going to be like King David, right? That's what you would want to see. You would want to see, okay, we got a nuclear bomb that's going to take out our enemy. We got a powerful force of individuals that have superpowers, and that's what we want to see. But this is the promise that God gives to them. And this is where we're going to land. Let's see, Luke chapter 2. And I'm going to read it and then we're going to break it down. Luke chapter 2, 8 through 12. This is the sign that God gives, which is kind of confusing. And in the same region there were shepherds out in the field, keeping watch over the flock by night. And the angel of the Lord appeared to them. And the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were filled with fear. They were terrified. The angel said to them, "Fear not, don't be worried, don't be scared. I bring you good news." Again, the same word, the gospel. I bring you evangelion, the good news. I bring you the gospel of great joy that will be for all people. Not just for one people group, but for all people. For unto you this day in the city of David a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. This will be the sign. So this is what he's saying. I have good news for you. I'm going to take you out of captivity. This is the sign. You will find a baby wrapped in a swaddling cloth lying in a manger. That's going to be the sign, a baby. That's your sign. I'm going to take you out of all this oppression, and the sign is a baby. That doesn't sound like a very convincing sign, right? We want to see these powerful people. We want to see this nuke. We want to see something powerful. And what God says is, I'm going to show you, and it's going to be a baby. Little baby Jesus. And so you see the shepherds out there. And the shepherds out, and it's funny because we see the Charlie Brown Christmas story. But the shepherds were kind of a rude bunch. They were literally outcasts. They were outside. So another person tells the story of, the shepherds are here. They see the angel like, hey, hide that drink, hide the new wineskin, hide the, because they would drink. Because they were outcasts. They were not the normal, dressed very nice. They were out there dealing with sheep and sheep food. And so God comes to these individuals. He doesn't come to Caesar, and he doesn't come to the Pharisees and these high officials. He comes down to these lowly people that no one wanted to be around. And he says, I'm giving you a sign. And this is the sign. You're going to find a baby. And this baby is going to be Christ the Lord. And so they're excited. They start praising God. And so what I really wanted to say is, for us older folks, maybe, we expected these guys, Arnold and Rocky and, all these other people. But God sees the world. God sees our hurts. God sees everything that's happening. And instead of sending someone like David that they're expecting King David, someone who's going to murder all of the Romans, he sends a baby. Just like we see in the book of Moses. The people of Israel are suffering for 400 years. And what does God do? He sends this little baby Moses inside of an ark. And he says, this is going to be my answer. I'm going to use people, but I'm going to use something that they don't expect. I'm going to use something because his plans are different than ours. When we see things and we say, okay, I'm going to do things like this powerful person because I see the results. Or I'm going to do something like this person because I see the results. And God says, my ways are different than your ways. He doesn't look at the outside. We always look at the outside. And we praise God for that. We praise God for the little children. Bring the children. And so God says a little person. He says that he sees a little person being the little, and God says, I'm going to use that. I'm going to use that person, and I'm going to bring the salvation to all the world. And so, as we start talking about Jesus, we talk about the differences, because the book of Luke, and I'll end with this, the book of Luke, it starts off with this little baby Jesus. They had to leave their hometown. They had to leave their hometown to go to the census because you have this big bad Caesar who's doing the census. And he's saying, I got your life and death in my hand. Because that's what happened to with the Romans. They were controlling you. And they said, I can crush you. And God said, well, I have another answer. And my answer is Jesus. And he can start as a baby. And it seems like the Jews, all their hope is gone. He sees that there's no other way but for him to come back down. Or to come down and lay his life down. So let's go ahead and pray. Father, I thank you, Lord, that your ways are different than ours. Father, I thank you, God, that you see, Lord, what's going on in our world, Father, and we're looking to the government, we're looking to the world, we're looking at all these places and saying, God, we need an answer. We need an answer. What's the answer for gun control? Is it more guns or is it less guns? What's the answer to our situations, God? Just like the Jews were looking for an answer and they were saying, are you going to send us another David who's going to murder the Romans and send us back to where we're called to be? You called us to be your chosen people. And Father, you send a baby who has to run for his life because they're trying to kill him. He's helpless and he's in the manger where he's supposed to be in a palace, but he was placed in the manger. Father, so I thank you, God. I praise you, God, that you are doing things different than what we think. That you are doing things different than what we understand, Father. And you're using us, Lord, to bring the good news, Father. To proclaim the good news that the battle is won. That we have the victory. That we are the head and not the tail. That we are no longer in captivity. That we are free so that we can walk in this freedom. Father, I pray, Lord. I pray, God, that you would have your way, Lord. I pray, God, that even as we leave, that it would start to hit our mind and we would understand a little bit better. I pray that it would hit our mind and we would understand a little bit better, Father, what you are saying, Lord. That you will open up our eyes and see, God. Father, for what you are doing, Lord, is going to be, God. You're coming back, Lord. And I pray that we will be ready. Amen.